How sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see. How I love the sound of that bell. Well, I'm certain you know that it was Zadok Casey who presented that bell to our congregation. But do you know the year? Anyone? The Reverend Mr. Long, perhaps?
If I'm not mistaken, it was 1854.
Very impressive. He is correct. It was 1854, and of that I am certain, for I was there. With that sound comes a flood of memories, just like this old hat and John's Bible. I suppose that these are but a few of the reasons that I feel compelled to write the recollections of my husband and our life journey together. As Lord Eaton writes, our history is not a burden on the memory, but an illumination of the soul. I must admit, the first time I laid eyes on Mr. Johnson in the fall of 1813, I was very much diverted by his uncouth appearance. Yes, he wore this hat, which had once been white, which he had worn constantly for 7 years. A drab-colored overcoat and boots of the heaviest and roughest of patterns. His pants had a patch on each knee, one a foot, the other half a yard long, the remains of an old coat. His hair was, a foot and a half long, but parted very evenly in the middle. His face was dark and weather-beaten, his brows black and heavy, and his countenance the most fearfully solemn I had ever encountered. How did I, Susanna Brooks, raised a Quaker and educated in a large and tasteful dwelling but half a mile from Newbury Courthouse in South Carolina, become the Reverend Mrs. Johnson? My friends, at times, that is still a mystery to me. We very much liked the Methodists and would upon occasion attend their meetings. It was at a Methodist meeting in 1811, when I was but 17 years old, that John Travis, the pastor in charge, gave an invitation to receive Christ and opened the doors of the church. I went to Father, who sat with his hat on, of course, and said, Father, I have a desire to join the church. I am not excited. I want to save my soul. But I would not join without knowing if you have any objection. With torrents of tears welling in his eyes, he said, do as thee pleases, Suki. I then turned to Mother, who sat nearby, but she, anticipating my request, said, go, my child. With all my heart, go. was but a few years later that I first heard the Reverend Mr. Johnson preach at a nearby M.E. church. Sister Wilcox astonished me by saying, "Sukey, the new preacher has noticed you. You'd better be on the lookout for a Methodist preacher's courtship." Well, I told her I did not believe a word of it, that I did not believe that he had noticed me or any other girl for that matter. And he was a rather droll-looking creature to be noticing anyone. On my way to meeting one night, he overtook me, and, well, I was very confused but tried to conceal the fact. And the following conversation took place. "That," he said, alluding to a waste house in an old field at some distance, "is a dreary-looking place. Who stays there?" "Well, I do not believe any person lives there." "Well, how would you like to live there?" "Not very much." "Well, how would you like to be a Methodist preacher's wife?" "Well, I have never given it much thought." "Well, I want you to think about it." And on he rode. Oh, my first impressions of Mr. Johnson underwent a gradual change. From ridicule and fear, I began to regard him with esteem. He was a devotedly good and pious man, and I could not help but respect him when his preaching had been attended by unusual manifestations of the power and glory of God. And on August 10th, 1814, in my parents' parlor, with Mother crying uncontrollably at the thought of her daughter becoming a preacher's wife, we were married. He leadeth me, oh blessed thought, oh words with heavenly comfort fraught. Whate'er I do, where'er I be, still 'tis God's hand that leadeth me. He leadeth me, he leadeth me, by his own hand he leadeth me. His faithful follower I would be, for by his hand he leadeth me. He leadeth me, oh precious thought, oh words with heavenly comfort fraught. Whate'er I do, where'er I be, still 'tis God's hand that leadeth me. He leadeth me, he leadeth me, by his own hand he leadeth me. His faithful follower I won't be, for by his hand he leadeth me. And lead us he did. After 20 years, endless circuits that Mr. Johnson rode as a traveling preacher, and almost a dozen children, he led us to the land that you now call home. We had saved enough money to purchase about 400 acres, a mile or two southeast of Mount Vernon in Jefferson County. Well, it was near John's brother, James Johnson. It was 1834, and Mount Vernon was, well, as you might say, a hard place. Well, there were only 5 professors of religion in town, 3 Methodists and 2 Baptists. And the same number of groceries, 5. The former having no connection, however, to the latter. There was no church. The schoolhouse was a miserable-looking log hut. And there were 2 blacksmith shops, a few stores, and, about 12.5 residences of different kinds, mostly of logs. Why, I remember one particularly dirty-looking cabin just northeast of the square, occupied by S.H. Anderson, afterward to be lieutenant governor of the state. The courthouse was a miserable 2-story brick built with 2 gables, like an old-fashioned farmhouse, only small and rusty. And within 10 feet of it was a dingy log hut which occupied the jail. Now, there was a wagon track wide enough for wagons to meet and pass on the 2 or 3 principal streets in town. And the rest of the streets and the entire public square were completely covered with bushes and dog fennel. But it was quite an interesting place. What was I about to tell them, sir?
The condition of the morals.
Oh my, how could I ever forget that? The physical condition of the town was in better shape than its morals. Saturday was a lively day. That was when the Jordans, the Moores, the Long Prairie Gang, and the Horse Creek Gang came to town. From 2 to 6 fights were the invariable results. And it seemed that if a man went home sober, he would not think he had been to town at all. Oh, I came from Alabama with a banjo on my knee. I'm going to Louisiana, my true love for to see. You know this. Oh, Susanna, oh, don't you cry for me. For I come from Alabama with a banjo on my knee. Races and shooting matches were carried on with the frenzy of intoxication. Well, knives, guns, clubs, and whiskey were kept going with an energy and a gusto that was truly appalling. Well, A has been cut to bits, B has been shot, C had his jawbone broken, and D had his nose bit off. Oh, it rained all night the day I left. The weather, it was dry. The sun so hot, I froze to death. Susanna, don't you cry. Let me hear it. Oh, Susanna, that's not sing it out, folks. Oh, let me hear it again. Oh, Susanna. Ooh. Oh, yeah. Well, Mr. Johnson was not the man to be an idle witness to such scenes as I have described. And, well, through his gathering of evidence against the whiskey gangs, Oh, he became quite unpopular. Well, there was this one big, ruffianly looking fellow named Shelt Livingston who annoyed us greatly. One night, he came to the house, called Mr. Johnson by every villainous name, kept up his brutal ravings for over an hour, and dared him to come to the door. The children and I were almost frightened out of our minds. But Mr. Johnson, I suppose, never felt fear in his life. For to my every exclamation of, "What shall we do? What shall we do?" he calmly replied, "Put the broom down, Suki. He will not come through that door. He only seeks to provoke me. The old musket is well loaded. I'll defend you." Well, despite a few challenging situations, we grew to love Mount Vernon, and our circle of friends was gradually widening. There were, after all, a number of families in the vicinity who were influenced by Methodism and all that was good. There were the Caseys, the Johnsons, the Maxies of the triple wedding Maxies, the Rogers, and a brother Hobbs and wife, who, they were the most excellent of the earth. Why, anyone would respect religion, if not grow to love it, by spending 15 minutes in Uncle Davy Hobbs' house. Give me that old-time religion, give me that old-time, you can sing, give me that old-time religion. It was good for Paul and Silas. 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 And it makes me love everybody. Makes me love everybody. Makes me love everybody. Makes me love everybody. And it's good enough. Give me that old time. Give me that old time religion. Sing it out, folks. Let me hear ya. Old time religion. If you're gonna get one more chance, here we go. Give me that old time religion. Give me that old time religion. Give me that old. Now, big ending, watch me. It's good enough for thee. Very nice. It was around 1840. The population of Mount Vernon was, I suppose, between 300 and 400, and a goodly proportion of those were Methodists. Among them were an Abe Estes and a supple Sawney Adams, two previous members of the whiskey gangs who had so persecuted Mr. Johnson. Now, not only were they Methodist, but class leaders. Adams was converted at a prayer meeting. And I remember with amusement the expression he used while rejoicing at the change. Said he, "Well, I used to think that people could keep from shouting if they wanted to, but hallelujah, I don't want to keep from it." Stand up for Jesus, ye soldiers of the cross. Lift high his royal banner. It will not soften from victory unto victory. The army shall he lead till every foe is vanquished, and Christ is Lord from victory unto victory. is because of these people and these families I have named that Methodism attained the position it now occupies in Jefferson County. I grew to love Mr. Johnson deeply. No man, woman, or child who ever approached him with civility ever received an abrupt or unkind response. A man of kinder feelings, of a more tender sympathy, of a more generous and unselfish heart, I never knew. And now, as the lonely feeling of widowhood falls like a mountain of darkness upon my wounded soul, I am comforted by that perfect assurance that all is well with my husband, and I shall see him again someday. The Lord has promised good to me. His word my hope secures. He will my shield and portion be, as long as life endures. Yea, when this heart and flesh shall fade, and mortal life shall cease, I shall possess within the veil a life of joy and peace. Won't you stand? Let's sing together. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first began. We've no less days. Oh, we've no less days to sing. Let's sing it out, friends. Than when we first begun. Thank you, gentlemen.
I told you I was amazed. Now you understand why. She created that herself. And let's just one more time let her hear our appreciation. Remember our app, our website, findhopedowntown.org, through which you can give, stay connected, or watch sermon videos that you might have